Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. I'm Wayne Highlander, National Sales Manager of Bona Adhesives.
And I'm Rob Johnson from Bona Training.
Rob, have you ever had a customer tell you to do something that you just flat out don't want to do? I mean, it could be something they want you to do to the floor, a way that they want you to install, any of those things, and you just don't want to do what they want you to do.
Yes. Yes,
Well,
I have.
This episode is about.
And I did it.
And you did it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I did it. And I regretted doing it. So
Really?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Good
Yep.
stuff. I love your honesty. Yeah.
That's why I'm a trainer.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a trainer. Okay.
Yep.
Because I've made every mistake in the wood floor business at least 3 times.
Yep.
Once you achieve that, that's it. You're now a head trainer.
Perfect. I tell you what, I think we've
It's
all
not the
been
right things you did. It's the wrong things that you did.
Well, you never learn anything. That's why you go to a school and there's a perfect panel. You don't learn everything on a perfect panel. You learn something on the imperfect ones. You know what I mean? When things don't go
Yes.
right. And then now, so how do we fix it now that we're in this jam? I hope I remember the guy's name. He was multiple floor of the year winner. Chuck Crispin. I don't think he'll mind me saying this because I have high regard for he was a great trainer and a great craftsman. But I learned something from him at an NWA school 20 some, maybe even 30 years ago. He was doing an incredible inlay and floor medallion. I can't remember. It was a medallion board around it, really super fancy. And he was one of the instructors. And it didn't come out like he wanted. There was a screw up, right? It was a screw up. And at the end of the class, everybody talked about what they did. Okay, so all the other panels got to see what everybody was working on. And he said, "Okay, guys, here's what we did. Here was the idea. Here was the design, and we wanted to incorporate all these different things. We got to this part, and we screwed up. We made a mistake, so it didn't come out the way we wanted, and that's why it does. It looks like this. Here's what we had in mind, and I thought, holy smokes, that's fantastic to hear that. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect, and everybody makes mistakes and whatever. And I thought that was so genuine and honest. It's hard to be an instructor. I have so much respect for these guys that instructed these schools and the training, what you guys do, because you're out there all the time, and not everything always going to turn out right or perfect. And I thought that was very genuine of him to say that, and we got what he was meaning. And I'm sure under different circumstances, if we had more time, he would have corrected it. But I think, hey man, you know what? You don't learn anything when everything is perfect. So
Exactly. That's one of the things that we say at all the Bona training schools. It's one of the first announcements that I make is I don't care what the panels look like. We're not looking to make perfect panels here. This is a batting cage or a driving range. We're just going to work in your swing. The other thing I tell people, if there's something that you want to try, this is where to try it.
mhm.
So if it does mess up, who cares? It's on one of the panels. You're
Yeah.
not going to have to redo somebody's living room or dining room. Do it here. There's something you want to try, whatever. It's when I diffuse that and let people, hey, all right, now I can, because there are a lot of times when somebody did want to see, well, I want to see what it looks like if I, use a big machine and then just power drive everything after that, or, whatever they want to try. I tell everybody, here's the place to practice. Here's the place to try it. So I couldn't agree more.
What if I said, Rob, I've always wanted to leave a great big stop mark in the middle of the room. Can I do that on your panel?
You absolutely can. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Or I'll say, well, you don't have to do it because I know somebody else will do it for you, but don't
Okay.
worry about it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, the reason why I asked you that is we're going to talk about, when customers ask you to do something and you just don't want to do it for whatever. And I'm not talking about if a customer wants you to lay on a wet subfloor. That's pretty obvious, right? We know that what the rules are. We can't do that. I'm talking about if a customer, for instance, let's say there's 15 urine stains in the floor, and they don't want you to sand them out, or excuse me, they don't want you to replace the boards. They just want you to, you know what, we'll live with it. Just sand the floor anyhow. But you flat out don't want to do it. Let's or let's say there's a patch in the middle of the floor. It's a white oak floor, and right in the middle of the floor, there's a red oak patch that's stair stepped, stands out like a sore thumb. There's almost comes to like a cold joints, and they tell you just go ahead and leave it. We don't want to replace the boards. Um,
You have a problem with that, don't you?
I do, yeah,
You got a big problem with that one, huh?
I do. I don't. Yeah, we'll talk about how to handle those. And some of it's just aesthetics. You know, yeah, I guess I do have a
I
problem
can
with that.
tell. I can tell right
Yeah,
away.
yeah. Um, so I think, how do you handle those complaints? How do you talk to the customers, and how do you have those conversations with the customers? Because I have 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, had jobs before where I thought, you know what, I just don't want to do that. I know what it's going to look. It's going to look like crap. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be associated with it. I don't want nothing about it. And again, maybe I can say this because it's a different type of time of year in my life. But I'm looking back in my career, and I think for sure the last 15 years, for sure, maybe even longer than that. If I wasn't going to be happy with the job, and I was asked to do something that I just thought was, and well, I'll give you for example, or also sanding Douglas fir. I can't stand Douglas fir floors. Every time I did one, I swore it would be my last. And then later in my career, I would sometimes bid a job. I'd show up there, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's the whole house of Douglas fir. We want to sand and refinish." And I got to the point where no, I didn't want to sand Douglas fir. I don't like the way they look. They're meant to be subfloors. They should be subfloors, and I don't like them. But then how do you do that? How do you, especially if you're into the job with somebody and they're asking you something? I mean, I think those are sometimes, like I said, if it's obvious ones like, there's certain rules you can't break, you can't lay on a wet floor, you can't do things like that. But sometimes there's just personal choices. So I think those are tougher conversations.
Mine was white pine.
White pine?
White pine.
Yeah.
There was a local lumber yard up here that makes flooring. They kiln it. I mean, they make some nice flooring, actually. They make some really beautiful flooring right here in the Albany area. Good prices, hardwoods, but they also made a white pine floor, 6, 8 inch white pine. And they sold that as flooring. And of course, everybody would see the price of the oak, and then they'd see the price of the pine, and like, oh, this is, and I would beg people, please. It's the last floor you want. It's a throwaway floor. It's not going to last. I go, not only, I mean, oh, no, we want it to get beat up, and we want it to have that, worn look. I go, you're going to have that look in 2 weeks. I said, I'm afraid of the look that comes 5 years down the road, where it's just completely.
You bring one to mind when you said that. In the old days, when people talked about distressing floors, it wasn't like hand scraping, those type of deals. It was like take a chain and beat the hell out of the floor, and take hammers or different objects and beat the floor because we want that look. I'm not that guy. I can't do it to a floor. I'd rather do it to you than the floor. You know what I mean? I just can't see. And I know guys have done it and loved it and enjoyed doing it, but that's a non-negotiable for me. I'm not going to do that.
So you're not into the money then. It's not about the money with you, is it?
It's most definitely about the money, but
because for years I was like, no, people call me, do you distress floors? No, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that to a floor? It's just, you're sucking the life out of the wood. And then years later, people were like, do you hand scrape floor? I'm like, God, no, that's the worst thing in the world. You're just destroying that floor, sucking the life out of the floor. But what I learned through those years is there was a guy behind me who was coming in and going, hell yeah, I do that. And he's charging, $6 or $7 a foot to do it. So as much as I was trying to talk people out of it because of what I thought was right, they were still going to get it done. I think talking people out of something that they want is one of the toughest things a floor guy can do.
Well, I agree. And I know that there's people coming behind you that'll do the job, whatever. But I just flat out, I gotta like what I'm doing. I gotta have my heart and soul into it. So there's a couple things I look at. One, if you're making a suggestion, for instance, like they want to do something and they have their heart set on something and you talk them out of it. Well, you damn sure better be right. You know what I mean? When you
Yeah.
talk about doing something they want to do, you better be,
Yeah, because now you're playing with an electric fence. They're just
yeah,
dying.
yeah,
They're just dying to find something.
yeah. If they have any doubts at all in their mind that, gosh, I wish I would have done what I thought I wanted to do,
Exactly. Yeah.
you're dead. The other thing too is, if you do go forward with what they want, if I try to talk them out of it, no, I'd say, listen, it's your floor, so I want you to be happy, but here's my thoughts. And I strongly urge this. And they don't do it. They say, no, no, we understand, but we still want to do whatever to the floor. And we go ahead and do it. At the end of it, I tell them I was completely wrong. I had no idea it was going to come out this nice. No matter what it comes out, because now it's a different, you know what I mean? Now, I want you to enjoy your floor. I don't want to put any negative baggage on the floor, a negative emotion. They paid a lot of money for this floor.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you, you know what? Gosh, I didn't see it myself, but now that it's done, holy smokes, it looks way better than I thought it was going to look.
I just didn't have your vision.
Yes, yes. So, and also be mindful of your tone. When I tell people no, that I don't like, if I don't want to do let's say I'm doing all the floors in the house, and now they have 2 more floors upstairs that are Doug fir, and they say, we want you to come back and do those floors. You also got to be mindful of your tone on how you talk to people when something like that, because you're turning them down, you're rejecting them. Oh, sure, it could be fun, but you have to do it where it's going to leave a good taste in their mouth in the end. You know what I mean? And sometimes even take the fall as much as it hurts. I mean, I'm not the best guy at sanding Douglas fir, and you know how much that would hurt to have the words that come out of my mouth. But I don't want to put it on them. It's not you, it's me.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, type of deal.
Yeah. Well, that customer that I had the white pine, I did everything I could to talk them out of it. And they were just, they had seen it someplace and the price was right. Everything, that there was just no talking them out of it. And I'll never forget, it was a big job too. It was like 1,500 feet. And the other thing that I hated about the stuff, it wasn't there was no end joints. So you had to make your own end joints on it. And, it was just long lengths and crowbarring everything in. It was nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't go so bad. You know what I mean? It wasn't so bad. Things weren't going so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Until we put a radiator machine on it. And we had got a new radiator machine. Do you remember the radiator? Remember the real old radiator machines? It kind of looked like an Edger. Had a huge electric motor, big wheels on it and everything. Well, did you ever see the Porter cable? Porter cable
Yes,
came out.
yes.
And it had like the little ball bearing wheels.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
indentations.
Guess what? Don't use that on a white pine floor.
Yep. Those steel wheels.
Oh, and there was probably a dozen radiators in the joint. And those little steel wheels. I mean, I can still, I'll have nightmares about that job.
Did you tell them the steel wheels or the radiator will, the steam from the radiators will take out the indentation from the steel wheels?
I wish I had done something.
You know what? Over time, that's the nice thing about this radiator heat. It will take out the steam. Will take out these indentations.
Well, right away, I just started blaming Pete. I was like, "Why would you take a radiator machine to a brand new floor? This is insane. What were you thinking?"
In front of the homeowner?
No, God, no. Pete and I only had a couple of fights. That was a good one.
Yeah. Well,
That was a good one.
when if you're if in this situation, I think it's important that your body language. If you act like you're beneath it all, or the job is beneath you and whatever, and that, I think it will turn them off. Or your body language goes a long way. You have to be very respectful, no matter what, when you're in this situation, and not to get personal, because it can go there pretty quick if they get offended. And sometimes they do get offended. But I think you also have to know what your non-negotiables are going into it. I mean, certain things you won't do, and you can't hem and haw around that. Just be very straightforward about it. For whatever reason that you don't do this in your business, this is just something we don't do. That's it. We've made it. It's a business decision, and I think that's the way that I would handle it.
We did this log cabin, and it was a kit. It was a log cabin kit, believe it or not. And the place was huge. It had to be like a 5,000 foot cabin, massive, but it was a kit. And this kit had everything, including the stain for the floor, including the stain.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
You picked out the color of your floors, and the stain came with it. No poly or anything, but the stain color came with it. And I couldn't tell you the name of the stain. I had never heard of it before. It just, and I just remember saying to the guy, no, I don't want to, I'm really comfortable with the stain that I'm using. I mean, we couldn't get, this was a long time ago, so I don't even think Bona had stain. I couldn't believe how bad this stain was. And the guy was adamant that I used it. I mean, there was no talking him out of it. And I'm like, look, I can give you the same exact color. Don't worry about the color. I'll give you whatever color, we'll make that color. But please let me use my stain. I wish I could remember the name of that stain. I bet Pete would know, because it was the worst stain I'd ever worked with. If you took your rag and put it on the floor, that spot never went away. You could rub it, you could do it. I mean, it was absolutely horrifying. It was the worst stain job ever. And for the life of me, I got done with the one room, and I said to the guy, look, this stuff it's not made for floors. Okay. That's what it is. It's just not made for floors. The other thing, it kept separating. I mean, you had to keep mixing this stuff the entire time you were using it. I did everything I could. I even showed the guy, look, I'm not trying to do a bad job here, but please let me go get my regular stain that I'm comfortable with. I'll sand this off. And he's like, no, that's fine. Just keep going. And I was like, fine. This job looks like it's 1,000 years old. Could not talk him out of not using that stain. It came with the kit. That's what he wanted. Like he thought it was going to avoid a warranty or something. I have no idea. But that was the absolute worst stain I had ever worked with in my life. There was no Bona dry fast stain back then.
In your floundering about in your own simple way, you came across the best example I could ever think of. Out of your simple mind came something brilliant.
And what is that?
The best example is stain. Using, my designer wants to use this stain. We love this color. We went to our designer, we went to the store, blah, blah, blah. And this is the stain color we got picked out. That's a non-negotiable. If it's not from this industry, if it's from a paint store, a high-end paint store, or you went somewhere, they added pigments to it and whatever, and put this all together, that is a deal breaker if there was ever a deal breaker.
After that job, there weren't a lot of times that I would say no, but after we did that job, I never worked with anybody's recommended stain. It was the stain that we work with all the time, and that was it. Stains that did turn into a deal breaker for me.
And the audacity.
I think it's audacity.
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 Okay, pronounce it out.
Audacity. Audacity.
Okay, I know. So the audacity of somebody To tell you to use a certain stain is beyond words to me. How do you know that this is compatible with what I'm using? How dare you, in fact? I mean, do you think why don't I just go get anything off the shelf anywhere and use it? You know what I mean? For someone to say that and not understand the chemistry, the science behind it, and everything else, everything that goes into this, it's absurd to me.
I'm going to do a Bona commercial right now. Okay. This is a shout out for Eileen. Is there anything better than Bona Dry Fast Stain for blending colors, for working with it, for coming back the next day and doing repairs on it? I mean, we get our you know what together when they came up with that stain.
Yeah.
And to think that somebody would have the audacity to say, no, I want you to use this stain. That's just today in today's market and everything. You're right. That's a deal breaker. Because if you haven't tried Dry Fast Stain, you are missing the boat. I mean, it is definitely, I know this is a commercial here, but I work with it a lot. And man, I have never worked with anything so forgiving and so easy to work with. It's crazy.
Yep.
It's awesome. So that's a shout out for Eileen. So were you successful at talking people out of it? Because I really wasn't.
Well, like I said,
I don't know if I didn't fight hard enough for it, but there were times where, like I said, and every time that I tried to talk somebody out of it and couldn't, it bit me. I wish I had not done the job after.
Mm-hmm. Well, you asked a question, and I'll tell you one that I didn't win, and I'm glad I didn't win. We were deep into the sanding process, like close to the final sanding on a really beautiful home in Atherton. If you know where Atherton is, I think it's the most expensive neighborhood in America right now. And
where's this? California?
Yep. There's no house that's not worth several $1 million. But anyhow, we got almost all the way done with the fine sanding when the lady, homeowner of the house, came up and announced to me that she goes, you know what? Since it's all sanded right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my faux painter come in and do faux painting on the borders. And I went, whoa, what was that again? She goes, yeah, I'm bringing this guy. And the guy was standing next to her. And this guy looked like all kinds of trouble to a craftsman. So I said, wait a minute, what are you going to do? She said, well, he's a faux painter. And he's going to come in and do some artwork on the borders over the weekend. And then you can, come back and do the final sanding. I said, ma'am, first of all, I don't know if it's going to be compatible with what we're doing, with our finishes and stuff. And secondly, we're at the fine sanding process. Had I known this, this is definitely a conversation that needed to take place. She goes, well, I didn't know if I could get them, blah, blah, blah. And, here's where we're at. So I said, all right. I mean, I was losing that battle. I mean, this was going to happen. I said, all right. So I went home dejected. Like, I mean, what is this clown going to do to the floor, man? I mean, this is unbelievable. It's not what I had in plan, whatever. And we showed up Monday and my mind was blown. It was stunning what he did. I mean, it looked like marble around the outside of the floor, like blocks of marble, different sizes, you know what I mean? That the floor ran into the marble. And it was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, stunning. And I looked at this guy, he was still there in awe. Like, I didn't even know this was possible, man. So I lost that one and I'm glad I did because it was incredible what he did. And as it turned out, it was not an issue with the finishes. And so the job looked stunning. I wish I had a picture of that. Back in the old days, we didn't take pictures of the jobs. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know.
Well, we didn't have the cameras.
We didn't have, right.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have all these things. So and how many times we said, we'll go back and take a picture of this when it's done. And you never do. You move on to the next one. That's one thing that's nice about the cameras today. You can take pictures.
So back in your day, you probably used that camera that you had the big thing you'd hold with the big giant explosion.
Yes,
right?
of course.
You had one of those.
Yeah.
For a guy your age, right?
When I know what you're talking about.
West Kaboom, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't have those.
It's so sad that you're bringing up these terrible memories that I'm having because we do the second coat of a job Friday. Said to the guy, oh, things are great. I mean, everything's awesome. Full house. Everything looks great. We are, cruising. Said we'll be back tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, do the final coat. He's like, could you know what? The floors look so good. My wife and I were talking that, could you come back and do it on Monday? Because we want to paint. And I was like, I really don't, no, I'd rather not. Okay. I need to do this, blah, blah, blah. And we got into a pretty good, heated discussion about it. Because I'm thinking, I know what's going to happen here, So I was adamant with the guy. Please don't get anything on the floor. Okay. Cover it up. Just, all right. If this is how we're going to do it, I have to come in and buff anyway. So, but please cover everything. When we come back in, and it was like they didn't put a cover down. That's how bad it was. I mean, it was absolutely, he just destroyed it. In my mind, I couldn't believe that somebody could do this to somebody else's work. Where I specifically told him, we're done, right? I mean, and the crazy part was they were his floors too. So now I'm like into it with this guy. And I'm like, we have to charge, another $600 because I really have to go through and hand scrape, do all, the whole, everybody knows the deal. You might have seen it before, but this one only happened to us one time. And he's like, no problem about the extra money, which should have been a red flag, because then he screwed us on the final payment. And it was, I bet Peter and I, in, I don't know how many years we did floors, 20 years of doing floors, whatever. Maybe we had 3 times where we got jammed up with a customer and we didn't get paid. And that was one of them. And it was that guy's fault. And I just can't believe that I'm starting to look back, and every argument that I lost, I ended up paying for in the end.
Yeah.
So I should have said no.
You just reminded me, and I'll make this quick, and we'll wrap this up. But speaking of that, Jeremiah Strong and I both know this guy. He's a contractor in Tennessee, and when I first got to know him, he would call with a lot of pretty basic questions. Like, he was new to the industry. He didn't know a lot about the industry, but he was very passionate about it. And, then he got himself into jams like, that he couldn't get out of, and it was costing him money, and, a fair amount of problems. And I was worried about his future because, it was very discouraging to him that the problems he was having as a contractor. And again, he was young in his career. And then, it's not been 4 years now, and I think he's got like 15 vans. So
wow,
isn't that something? It says a lot about perseverance, and it's you can't look at a guy's heart and see how and how tough he is, and how much stamina he is, and how much he's willing to take. And so yeah, this is a guy that I would have thought, I don't know, most guys, I'm really worried about him lasting in this industry. And I'm telling you, Rob, a sweetheart of a guy. I couldn't be more happy for his success. I know it's off topic, but anyhow, I don't know why I even brought it up, but yeah, there you go. All right. So there you go. Thank you, Rob. This has been another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. Please stay tuned for another episode.